Hey, it's Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and it is Monday. It's November 7th. This will be our chart listen for the day. And just looking at the daily chart, we did have some follow through buying today. Nothing spectacular. I mean, when we go over and look at the chart, most of this was sideways, and then late afternoon, they drove it up a little bit and took it to a new high. Uh, I mean, doesn't mean we can't get some continued follow through buying here, but with tomorrow being election day, I guess this is a little pre-election day rally, and we'll either find out tomorrow how the market reacts to the election day, which who knows? I mean, one day I hear the Democrats are going to take the House and Congress. The next day I hear the Republicans are going to take both of them. So who knows how it's going to turn out? We'll have to see. But depending on how the market likes the turnout of the election tomorrow evening, tomorrow we might still see a little follow through buying. Um, and again, we could see the market continue to go up. It looks like this is the first close outside those, so we may attempt to retest these highs before prices go lower. That wouldn't surprise me, but at the same time, it wouldn't surprise me if we turn back down here pretty quickly and head lower. So it's just, I mean, you can see we're just kind of chopping. I mean, this looks more sideways than it does down anymore, and it certainly doesn't look strongly up. It just looks sideways, and so my guess is that's kind of what we're going to see. Prices chopping around at some point till we either. I mean, when you back out and look at the really big picture here, this blue channel's still in play, and we're nowhere near the testing the low side of this range yet. So that could mean that we're making a bottom here and we're going to go higher, but most likely it means we're going to turn down here at some point and head lower again. That's what I'm thinking. But we'll just have to see. There's just not a lot of clues. It's really hard to tell here. It wouldn't surprise me if we don't try to retest these highs at all. But it wouldn't surprise me if we make another leg down as well. You see we've got one clear leg down there off of these highs when we were overbought up here. And then we were getting towards oversold conditions back down here again, and now we've bounced a little bit. And this doesn't look like a huge bounce at this point, but that doesn't mean it can't turn into one. Sometimes they start slowly and then accelerate. So it's just hard to make much out of this chart. So we'll flip over to the intraday chart, which pretty much matches it. It looks more bullish here than it does on the actual 2000 tick chart because it's mostly sideways there. But let's flip over there and take a look. And here's our chart for today, and it was mostly sideways. This is like a flag type pattern. It spiked up and then turned down and traded down before we got a break. And we tried to make a new low and couldn't, and then it ended up going higher. But most of the day is spent going sideways. Anytime you see prices below the EMA, above it, below, above, below, even this downtrend is almost sideways like. Above, below, above, below, above, below, above, and then finally we're above it and we're trending higher here. So up until about 1 o'clock today, this was a sideways market, and there's no clear resistance area. We're not turning at the same spot every time. There's no clear support area. We're not bouncing at the same spot every time. So it makes it hard to trade it. So there's not a lot of trades to here today. Again, there's a few in the afternoon, which is, usually you'll get your best trades in the morning and you'll get more in the morning, but sometimes the market changes. And I think this is some late evening rally going into the election tomorrow. So maybe it's some short covering. Maybe there's some new buying coming in, people hoping the market's going to rally after the election. So we'll see. But let's back out here, or zoom in here, I should say, and go through the trades. And 7 o'clock came right over in here as we're just kind of bouncing around in here. Not much happening right in here, but we do continue down. And you can see this is just basically a lower high here, as I suspect we're probably gonna make a second leg down. I marked this green. This is not a high probability trade, but you can see we've got the short-term channel coming down. We get a break, 2 legs up, and then you would expect we get 2 legs down. And so this was just a lower high off this, basically a double top here. Looking for prices to make 2 legs down after the break of that channel. We bounce here, we come back. I marked this trade. Again, this is a fairly flat, even though this is a downtrending channel, it's almost sideways. And you can see the EMA even looks sideways. And we're going back and forth above and below here. And so this was basically a failed second entry short, looking for prices to come back to at least the trend line. And there's plenty of room there. So if you notice, you basically got a double bottom here. You get 1 leg up, first entry short, second leg up, second entry short. It fails. So a break above that, you're probably going to at least get a scalp. So we're just looking for a scalp there. There was no news today, so we didn't have to worry about any wild and crazy news item. And of course, you get a couple of legs up, and then it reverses. This trade I did not mark it. It's right at the key entry points, a little bit sideways, although it's still a little bit below the EMA. I mean, I went back and forth. That should at least be green, but you probably want to wait on a lower high here just to be sure. And you get that here, but no signal bar. There's a failed second entry long here, but that doesn't set up like a reversal. And this is just a first entry, and this is really your signal bar. Okay, I had an interruption there, and it lasted longer than I thought it would, and I'm not sure where we left off. I think we were talking about this trade. I marked it green, and there was a failure here, but it doesn't set up properly, and then you come over here and you got a second entry short, big nice signal bar. The only problem is we do have the break in new high. We're not back to the upper side though, and we just came off the low side. So you're probably better to wait on a lower high here. But this is a second entry short and a big bearish bar. And this has played out, this green channel working up. So if you're going to be a little risky, that's the one to be risky on. And then you do make the lower high with another big bearish bar. I like going short right there. That's the one to take. I didn't mark this either. It's two sideways. You might look at this as a double top. It's close enough to be some sideways stuff, and then try to go higher once, twice, because you do see a clear leg down there. But you could almost argue there's a leg down there. So anyway, this is one I thought real hard about. It's a possibility. It does close outside the lows here, but it's still a double bottom there with matching lows, and we haven't reached the top, so sometimes it'll fake you out and then it'll head back up here and then turn down, and so that's the worry right there. So that's not I mean, I just skip that trade. I think you're just better off to skip it for those reasons. And of course we get a little overshoot right here. You got a little channel that bounces, you get a close outside new high. And there's another bearish bar, and that's like the third time it's turned out at the midline. So you can see the midline running right up through there, and that's 1, 2, 3 times. I take that trade right there. And of course it bounces again, and we do get an overshoot here, so it's a chance we may not try to make a new low here. And I don't think we ever do make a new low. I think prices attempt it, but they just never can make it happen. So, but suddenly it rallies here. And unless you're going to try to pick this low down here, which you can see the prices have been below the EMA a little longer there. We're not, and it's pointing down now. We're not swinging back and forth yet. So I don't think I would risk buying here. I think I would wait. And of course we run up and you get a first entry, and there's another second entry right there, but it doesn't break lower to this bar. This is your signal bar, so no trade there. Comes back again, and you might even argue there's a triple test if you had a decent signal bar, but again, there's no signal bar, then no signal bar to go long, and it runs on up here and then just turns down. And again, I don't see, you might argue there's a failure right here. Notice we're working down first entry and then the second leg down, second entry, and then when it breaks below there, that's a failure. And it's really close to the EMA. The problem here is there's not much room to scalp out. And so it could bounce right there and go higher and then turn down. It is a failure. There's some reasons to like that one. I'll mark it green. And then we come down, we just start working sideways. Same thing here. You get a failed breakout, but generally you want to wait on a lower high just to be sure when it starts making higher highs like that. I wait on a lower high. And so, but again, there's some reasons to take that on a failed breakout. It's probably going to fail, which it does. And then it fails out the bottom, and it ends up working higher. I don't see any other trades here I like. By this time, you made that's 3 straight higher highs after a failed break lower. The odds are we're going higher now, so I just wait. And then we're just too much congestion sideways. You might trade this as a triple test here. You can see one. This really looks like one test. So 2 and then 3, and you got plenty of room to high. So you might take that one. It's a little congested. Same thing here. It ends up really. Let me just back up here a second. Really, what you got is you got another small trading range in here. So you failed out the bottom, then you failed out the top. But we're trending higher here, so this makes this one a little risky, or a little riskier, makes it riskier. So maybe you take it though. You could argue for it to be green. And then you can see we just moved a measured move, so it really just expands into a bigger channel is what happens. No reason to buy down here. I wouldn't sell up here until you get this reversal. Notice you got a new high. It tries to go higher once, pushes back into the range below the EMA, pulls back. It tests the EMA. It tests the previous resistance, and it acts as resistance again. So if it breaks lower there, you got them trapped most likely. And you can see that's a trap, but look how that just the bottom drops out. That's because they got everybody piled up to the long side, and then they reverse it on a failed breakout here, and they all have to exit. And that's what a trap looks like. And you can that for sure trapped them, and boom, they all got to exit. All these longs have to exit, and the new shorts come in, and then they do the same thing and reverse it back the other way. But notice here it can't even really go up here. It's making a little bit higher highs, but this is really a range that it breaks out. And the problem is there's not much room back to this low, and you see how it bounces there, and it could bounce without giving you it could turn up there, or it could bounce and stay inside and not give you room. So I don't think there's room to get out there is the problem. So I'd skip that one. And then finally we're working higher again, and notice you get a new low. And then it tries to go lower once, twice. So first of all, you got a failed second entry short. And then you got a new high here, so you get a first entry, and then it pulls back. And when it breaks higher here, really there's a second entry on this bar, but I'd wait for this to close. And so if it breaks higher, that's a second entry long. But then or actually, let me start over here. You got your new low here, so you get a first entry, second entry. So that's a failure on this one. While this was a second entry long, I'd skip the second entry, but when it gave you the failure, I would enter there. So that's how I should have been describing that trade. So I think I got ahead of myself on the failure there. You might argue there's a failure right here, but I don't think I would take that one. This really looks like a leg. It's not a big one, but you can see that they trap shorts here, and it turns up. But this is what I was looking at. New high, first entry. And there's a second entry there, but you got the engulfing bar. You got to go long up here, and it's right into the high. But notice the new low, and when it tries to go short twice and fails, if it breaks above there, you got a trap. You got a short failure. This one didn't end up fooling a lot of people because you can see it doesn't really act like a big time trap, but it still would have worked. And then you're just still chopping sideways. Finally, you get this. I didn't draw this, but there's a shorter term channel working up through here, probably about like that. And you get a close outside, new high, and then you make a lower high. So um, because this is played out and you get the lower high, it's a little congested, but I still think it's far enough away from the EMA that you might want to risk taking that short right there, because it's going to probably come back to the EMA, and it may come all the way back to the trend line down here. This really at the time looked like an overshoot, and so and this is not a real strong trend or anything. So I mean, the other reason I like this one is because of the resistance. You don't really still have a channel there, but look how many times you can see how many times we turned down there. I didn't mark this one, but that one looks just as good as this one, really. Just because of the resistance, it looks like a range almost. So um, if you entered here, the only thing I didn't like about this one is a possibility. Somehow my channel has moved a little bit here. This should be up here, and that confirms the trend line right there. But anyway, uh, there's a failed second entry long right there. There's a new high. This is basically a double top and tries to go higher once, and then it turns all the way down, then tries to go higher again. And so that's a failure. It's another test of that resistance area, all of that. So then, of course, we bounce off this trend line, and you get a higher low here. And I put it in the wrong place. It should be right here. Notice your new low, first entry, second entry, and I wouldn't trade this on the engulfing bar, but when this closes higher and above that resistance, I like going long there, just because of that trend line too, and because of this trend line. You would expect we're at least coming back to here if that was an overshoot, and if it wasn't an overshoot, we might go all the way an equal distance, which we do. So I like that trade, and I don't see anything else in here you really could take. Um, we're moving higher. This turns out to be a pretty strong move here, but we're just so far away from the EMA, and we don't really come back to this trend line except once here maybe. This should be more like this. And so unless we're coming back to this trend line, even on this strong trend, there's just not much you can take there. And of course, you can see we come back and we just keep chopping higher here. I like this one just because it's a second entry long. Notice the new high, first entry, and then when it broke higher there, it's a second entry, but it's also, you can also say we tried to go lower on that EMA 3 times. And so with a combination of both of them, you could take that trade right before the close there. So actually, I think this should have been way up here, like so. But yeah, that's how I saw it today. This was a pretty strong afternoon trend here. And you can see we got above that EMA and we just continued to work higher. So you really would expect that if we kept going higher from here, we might test this upper side again. But when we couldn't get it and got below here, but that's well after 230, so it doesn't matter anyway. But once you realize we're going lower here, don't try to go long again until you get back to this trend line. So you can see it mostly just kind of sideways mixed trading, and then suddenly we have an afternoon rally. That's a pretty good rally too on this afternoon. This move here was particularly strong, and you close outside, move to a new high, then it kind of sells off. back to this main trend line. So anyway, I'm not going to beat around the bush with this one today. I'm going to wrap it up, and it's getting kind of late here anyway. But we'll be back again to do it tomorrow. We'll see what tomorrow brings. I'm not sure what to expect. It's probably going to be Wednesday before we maybe get a new direction. I'm just not sure. But my guess is the market's probably waiting on the outcome of the election, midterm election. So we'll see how all that goes. But anyway, if you're a voter, get out and vote if you're in the U.S. and especially if you have something going on in your state or your district, and exercise your right to vote. And we'll see what happens, and we'll be back tomorrow. This is Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com.